All right, everyone. I think we're good to go for another episode of the world famous Prospect Avenue podcast. I am your host, Kris Baker, here in the bunker in lovely Hamburg, New York. Date of recording, January 29th, 2024. The Sabres head off to the All-Star break, winners of 2 of 3 games on their West Coast road trip. So now they hit vacation, maybe play some golf, get some margaritas and some pina coladas. But we will be right here in the bunker because there's a lot of ground to cover in the Sabres prospect ranks. We're about to hit the home stretch over in Sweden and Finland in those professional leagues. Before you know it, it'll be the home stretch in Canadian Major Junior, and the playoff races will start to tighten in college. So there is no shortage of action to get to, and we're going to dive right in. But as always, before we begin, if you could please like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you listen on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, if you could please leave a 5-star review. All right. We're going to begin tonight in the Western Hockey League because that's where goaltender Scott Ratzlaff of the Seattle Thunderbirds had a big night on Saturday with a career-high 62 saves as the Thunderbirds ended the 8-game winning streak of the Western Conference frontrunners, the Everett Silvertips, with a big 3-1 victory. Ratzlaff was sensational in this one, stopped his first 57 shots before a goal line scramble with 1:44 left, saw the puck get over the line, controversial goal call. It was under Ratzlaff's pad for a little bit, but they elected to allow the goal and end his shutout. And then Ratzlaff had to come back there in the final minute and a half or so and kill a penalty, with Everett also having an extra attacker out there. So it was a 6-on-4 advantage. He held firm, finished with 62 saves. Really big night for Ratzlaff. So now this was a goaltender, if you recall, right before Canada announced the World Junior Selection Camp roster. He was starting to ramp up his game after kind of a shakier start to the season. So he really got his game back on the rails. As the calendar was flipping from November to December, he goes off to Team Canada, doesn't play, but that's okay because it puts him in really a prime position to play a leading role at the World Junior Championship next season. But then he gets back and the calendar flips to 2024. He's now had 8 starts in calendar year 2024. He's faced over 35 shots in each of those 8 starts, including 2 starts where he saw 40 plus shots, 1 start where he saw over 50 shots. And then on Saturday, of course, he faced over 60. In those 8 starts, Ratzlaff has compiled a .933 save percentage. So he had a combined 96 saves over the weekend on Friday and Saturday. That earned him the WHL Goaltender of the Week for the period of January 22nd through the 28th. So now Ratzlaff's going to come into February with a 12-14-1 record. He has a 3.31 goals against average and a .904 save percentage. He's one of 3 goaltenders in the Western Hockey League with a losing record, but has a save percentage over 90%. So it's good to see. This is a goaltender, seen a lot of minutes and a lot of rubber in Seattle. And as he gets more action, he seems to be more effective. He sees a lot of shots. Like I said, he stops a lot of shots, and he's doing a really good job out there. So really encouraging for the still 18-year-old netminder to hopefully have a nice, strong finishing kick here for Seattle. They're not out of it yet. They're near the bottom of the Western Conference standings, but they're just a couple points shy of that 8th and final playoff spot in the WHL Western Conference. So not out of it yet. And Ratzlaff keeping up his high level of play can only help the T-Birds grab that final spot. We're going to stay on the World Junior flavor there for a little bit and get another update going here on Vsevolod centerman Noah Ostlund. So Ostlund last week, he notched 2 goals and an assist on Saturday in the Lakers' 5-1 win. Now, Ostlund, if you recall, last week, he was sitting on a 5-game point streak. That came to an end on Tuesday, but he got back on track in Saturday's win. And he now has multiple points in 4 of 7 games since coming back from that really nice performance with Team Sweden at the World Junior Championship. He has 10 points in total in those 7 games, and that's boosted his season productivity to 0.7 points per game, which, if you recall, that's approaching that 0.75 points per game number that we had kind of assigned to him back in the Prospect Avenue European preview earlier this season. So good to see him ramping up nicely. We've talked ad nauseum about his pace. His really precise. His passes are fast, crisp, accurate. Really everything he does is really crisp execution wise. So now, getting ready to come over to Rochester next year. Just want to see him pack on a few more pounds of muscle onto that 5'11" frame, but really good 200-foot player, real good range to his game, really nifty playmaker, having a really nice ramp up here for the top club in the Swedish Hockey League. He's playing in that third line role right now, averaging in recent games anyways, just over 15 minutes of ice per game. And he's at an even 16 minutes time on ice average for the entire season. The man who he's trailing in the Sabres prospect ranks in terms of time on ice this season is Anton Wahlberg, as a junior age player anyways. And I want to just do a quick update there on Wahlberg. So he hasn't collected any points, Wahlberg, in his 6 games since returning from the World Junior Championship. He is playing a leading role in those 6 games by averaging 19 minutes and 51 seconds. So he had a really nice workload last week as the Redhawks won 2 straight games. And that was important for Malmo to win those games because they are, first of all, they had a 6-game losing streak. But secondly, they're chasing Rogla for that 10th place spot in the SHL. And that 10th place spot's really important because that's the last qualifier for the pre-quarterfinal round in the SHL playoffs. Malmo has a winnable game coming up on Thursday against Oskarshamn, who's in last place. So hopefully they can overcome Rogla there, get into that 10th spot, and just have a better outlook on their chances of avoiding relegation. Wahlberg now, with this boost in ice time, again, I mentioned in those 6 games, he's been averaging just shy of 20 minutes of work. He continues to lead all junior-aged forwards in the SHL in terms of time on ice with 16 minutes and 59 seconds. So I just mentioned that Ostlund is averaging 16 minutes flat as a junior-aged forward in the SHL. He's second among junior-aged forwards to Wahlberg. So both of those Sabres prospects, varying levels of production, but they are playing key roles, getting some good developmental minutes over there as junior-age players. Now, it'd be nice to get Wahlberg back on the score sheet and get him producing like Ostlund has coming back from the World Juniors. But regardless, he's been making some really nice plays off the puck, earning every bit of work that he's getting on Malmo's second line. We're going to keep going now here in the Amerks. We'll get to the AHL, I guess. So we talked a little bit about Viktor Neuchev in recent episodes of Prospect Avenue, and I think we're going to keep talking about Viktor Neuchev. So last week, he came into the action riding a 6-game point streak. That came to an end on Friday as the Amerks were blanked by Utica. But Neuchev rebounded really nicely on Saturday with a goal and 2 assists in Rochester's 7-4 victory over Laval. So Neuchev in that one was bumped up on a line with Tyson Jost and Brett Murray. That line was excellent. And that's going to be a unit that's going to be really hard to break up with that trio combining for 10 points in that victory over the Rocket. And part of the reason for that line shuffle was Brandon Byro being out of the lineup on Saturday. So he's day-to-day, and more to come on that. And as a result, by the way, of Byro being day-to-day, Jiri Kulich slid back to center. So Kulich has been playing wing coming out of the World Juniors. He went back to center on a line with Lucas Rusek and Isak Rosane. Lucas Rusek had a 13-game point streak coming into the action last week. That point streak ended, and we'll see if he can resume his production here with a new centerman if Byro remains out. Now, Jiri Kulich is currently on an 8-game goalless drought, and that ties for the longest goalless drought of Kulich's AHL career. He went 8 games without a goal last November. So it'll be nice to see him get that dry spell ended here. And we have to remember last season, Kulich needing a little bit of runway to reset coming off the World Juniors. That's nothing new. Same thing happened last year when he got back. He had a couple of assists in those January games. And then when the calendar flipped to February, I think it was February 2nd last year was the first game that the Amerks played of that month. That's when Kulich started scoring goals at a torrid pace to finish the season. He carried it into the playoffs and again to the start of this season with the Amerks. So we'll see if Kulich can get that going as the calendar flips back into to February, and we'll see if he does it as a centerman or if Biro comes back and Seth Appert elects to bounce Kulich back out to the wing spot. Another player from the Amerks that we mentioned in recent weeks was Nikita Novikov, and I think we should probably talk about him briefly here. Gave a shout out to him recently, like I mentioned, and that big defenseman, he's been noticeable this season, not just because he's a big physical specimen. He's been noticeable because he's regularly jumping up into the play, and he flashed that dynamic again on Saturday where he joined the play, went right to the edge of the goal mouth and picked up his first North American pro goal. A couple minutes later, he jumped up again into the play and picked up an assist for his first multiple point night as an American Hockey League defenseman. And it's really good to see, and he's definitely becoming more comfortable. And I think there's some reasons for that. You can sit there and look at the smaller ice surface that he's playing on here in North America and saying, okay, he can cover more ground. Maybe that brings out that attacking layer to his game just by virtue of having less ground to cover. Maybe there's something to that. But, I think that it's no coincidence, both with Neuchev and Novikov really starting to ramp up their production, and they're just more noticeable. They're more comfortable here now. They're picking up the language more. They're part of the team more. They've earned the respect of their teammates, and it helps to produce, but it's really not shocking to see these young Russians really starting to come out of their shell. They're able to communicate more effectively. Neuchev didn't speak really a lick of English when he came over here, and Novikov had a little bit of a head start with the language, but it was great to see over the weekend. I think it's just really cool. He had the big game, the 2-point night. They brought him out for post-game press availability. He stood in the line of fire and took the questions. Some of them were short answers, but he did a really good job addressing the press. He only had to look to the side to get some help with understanding or interpreting some of the questions, maybe once or twice in those couple of minutes of media availability. So I just think it was really good to see. I love the progress both on and off the ice that we're seeing from these Russian players down there on the farm under Seth Appert's watch. So we're going to bounce out now. We talked a little bit about Kulich. I wanted to mention that. Lucas Rusek talked about his point streak ending. And by the way, with Rusek, it's never always going to be about the points with him. He's a dogged worker out there. He gets his points from hard work and effort, using speed to take away time and space from his checks. Just a committed two-way player. And it's important to note, again, he'll get some points by virtue of having the effort. He's not the prettiest player. He's a dog for sure, but I love watching him play because he's just out there applying a lot of energy every time he hops over the boards. But it's important to note that he's doing a lot of things right there down on the farm here because he's on that one-way contract next year. And I think the Sabres want to see Rusek be one of those guys that rounds out the bottom of the lineup next year at the NHL level. So whether or not he sticks with Kulich and Rosane, or if Biro comes back and then, Rusek rides shotgun with Biro, either way, he's going to be a very important piece here down the stretch for the Amerks. And I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that accordingly. So we've been talking a lot about point streaks, and we should probably transition into talking about Vsevolod Komarov up in the QMJHL because he's been on a little bit of a heater here with a 9-game point streak. So big right shot defenseman. He picked up a power play goal and 2 assists 2 Sundays ago in Drummondville's 8-5 win over his former team, the Quebec Remparts. He followed that up on Friday with a goal and 3 helpers. So a big 4-point night. And that earned Komarov a spot on the QMJHL's team of the week for the 2nd consecutive week. So Komarov, if you recall, about a month ago, a little over a month ago now, he was traded from Quebec to Drummondville. He's picked up 5 goals and 19 assists in 16 games since being dealt to the Volts. So now through 38 games, Komarov is leading all QMJHL defenders with 43 points and also 73 penalty minutes. He ranks 3rd among Q defenders with 125 shots on goal. Now, the offensive production it's nice to see his junior age player. But it's really his defensive play, his physicality that really stands out. That's what has him, for me anyways, earmarked as a pretty compelling NHL prospect. He's going to need to adjust to the speed, maybe dial in or calibrate that two-way range to his game when he turns pro. And that's going to take some time. But it's that size that he has, that reach, that rugged mentality that really could see him become, at some point after some seasoning on the farm, a really just sturdy right side piece at the NHL level. Again, continued development. It's going to take some time, but I wanted to mention it because I don't think he's going to be the super dynamic point producer and big offensive dynamo that he is at the Q when he turns pro. I just wanted to maybe set some proper expectations. I mean, stranger things could happen. He's going to pick up his share of points. I just don't think he's going to be like this leading point getter amongst blue liners in the league by any means when he makes the jump to North American professional hockey. So we'll keep it going here. This is not going to be the longest edition of Prospect Avenue. I think that's okay for a lot of you. Sabres are on break. You probably want to be on break as well here in the midpoint of the season. So we're going to keep the train moving, and we're going to go over to the Western Hockey League real quick and check in just real quickly on Matthew Savoie, because we're on the theme of point streaks, and he kept his going last week. He's now at a 15-game point streak. So a couple games over the weekend, and he picked up a combined 3 assists in those games, had the shootout winner on Friday. So Savoie, he's stuck there at the center position since being dealt from Wenatchee to Moose Jaw. He's got some solid line mates there, and he's producing, getting a lot of power play time, as you can imagine, even doing some secondary PK work as well there for the Warriors. But another 3 points last week. Savoie continues to lead the Western Hockey League with 2.18 points per game. Staying in the Western League, just real quick here, a brief update on Mats Lindgren. So I had mentioned last week that he missed a few games there with an undisclosed injury. He came back into the Red Deer lineup on Friday and Saturday. And in those 2 games, he picked up a goal and 3 assists to help the Rebels to a pair of victories. And that's important to note. He comes back, he plays a big role for Red Deer. So nice to see him step back in and resume his production. He's now on a 4-game point streak, and the Rebels are now running hot with a 9-game winning streak out there in the Western League. So good to see them ramping up at the right time here. They want to close the season and keep it going here down the stretch and hopefully take a run in the WHL playoffs. It's going to be tough for them. Team, hasn't scored a ton of goals this year. Their power play it's been, on and off. But it certainly helps to have Lindgren in that lineup because he is a key puck mover and a key shot generator from the center point there for Red Deer on the power play. So nice to see him, like I said, get back in action last week and keep his production humming. We're going to end this week's episode of Prospect Avenue just by tying up some loose ends on some topics that we discussed last week. So if you recall, Western Michigan centerman Matteo Costantini entered last week riding a 12-game point streak. That unfortunately came to an end on Friday and Saturday. He went without a point over the weekend as the Broncos were swept at home by Colorado College. So Western Michigan now slides down to the number 15 spot in the NCAA men's hockey rankings. Costantini will look to resume his production here. He's been having a great season, just couldn't make it happen last week on home ice. And last but not least, we mentioned Viljami Marjala last week. So he signed the 1-year extension with TPS Turku, but also mentioned that he's been chasing TPS's rookie scoring record of 38 points set in 2018-2019 by Capo Caco. Marjala went without a point in 3 games last week, so he remains at 9 goals and 26 points for the season. So he's chasing that record, but now with 14 games left to play with 26 points, he needs 12 points in those 14 games to tie Caco's record. He needs 13 points in those last 14 games to set the new record for TPS as a rookie scorer. And he has a shot. 4 of those remaining 14 games for TPS are against Saipa, HPK, and JYP. Those are the 3 teams that are at the bottom of the Liga standings. And Marjala has a multiple point game against each of those 3 teams. So We'll see if he can get hot here down the stretch and get to that 39 points and break that record of Kakko's at 38. And you can bet that we'll be providing the updates here on Prospect Avenue. That's it. We're at the 20-minute mark. I think that's a nice, comfortable spot here on this All-Star break edition of the Prospect Avenue podcast. As always, I thank you for joining here every week, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.